all the people that I talk to, I mean, the overreaching theme is I don't feel safe leaving my money in the bank. I don't feel safe leaving my money in the bank. And so, I think they're probably seeing what is kind of a precursor, perhaps, or they're trying to stem a run on the banks. And maybe we're very early in making a statement like that, but the banks are undercapitalized and they're over leveraged, and it wouldn't take too much of that type of people saying just I want out for there to be great problems in the industry, in the banking industry.
I'm Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and this is the Miles Franklin Special of the Week for September 6th through 13th, 2022. This week we have something a little different. Coins remarkable not for an exceedingly low premium, but remarkable for being some of the most stunning, sought after, and rarely available coins minted today. The Mexican Libertad series. Produced in highly limited quantities by the oldest mint in the Americas, the Libertad comes in 1/10, 1/4, 1/2, 1, 2, and 5 ounce sizes. Because of low mintages and consequent rarity of these coins, they do carry a higher premium than even American Eagles, but we have them at what we believe are the lowest premiums available from any dealer, so that you can secure these coins at the best prices on the market. And finally, we continue to have silver Philharmonics, Krugerrands, Britannia, and Kangaroos at only $4.75 over spot. Call us at 1-800-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-800-815-4237 to lock an order. We're happy to help you even after hours and on weekends. I'm Kaiser Johnson, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're always delighted to have this returning guest. Andy Schectman is with us for our weekly market update this Tuesday, September 6, 2022. Andy, thanks for coming back on Liberty and Finance.
Great to see you again. Hope you had a great holiday weekend. Hope everyone out there did. Nice to relax and hang with family and friends. It was good. So glad to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we missed you last week because you were traveling. And we actually got several inquiries. Where's Andy? And then, in fact, yesterday during our 9 p.m. Premiere of one of our videos last night, they said, is Andy going to be there tomorrow? Is Andy going to be there? So I said, yes, Andy's going to be there for the weekly market update. So here we are.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I had to bring my daughter to college in University of Wisconsin. So it was great. And I've never seen her so happy ever in her entire life. So it wasn't so sad as everyone always says. It was actually kind of a happy deal. So it was a good week, and it's good to be back, though. A little bit rested, which is nice, too.
That's always helpful, for sure. We've got a story that came out this morning that I put out on our Twitter feed. It's right in line with everything you've been talking about since I saw your main stage presentation at the Rule Symposium on Natural Resources Investing last month in Boca Raton, Florida, where you talked about the world absolutely pivoting away, drumbeat after drumbeat after drumbeat, away from being subject to the U.S. dollar hegemony and being under the thumb of the capricious and spendthrift Western world, including the U.S. and Europe, and instead going off on their own and deciding that they're going to do things that serve their best interest. Remarkable, huh? Imagine that. So here's one that came out from Bloomberg. We'll put a link to it in the description of this video. Bloomberg, under their markets section, Gazprom, which is a Russian company, Gazprom to shift gas sales to China into rubles and yuan from the euro. Gas giant also plans to move 25% of their sales to Turkey to rubles, and Kremlin seeking to move trade out of, quote, unfriendly currencies. So that, we'll put a link to that Bloomberg article so people can avail themselves of that. But I thought we have to kick off with that because it's just exactly what you've been telling us to keep watching for, because it just keeps happening. So can you weigh in on that and let us know why you think this is meaningful, in what context?
Well, it's meaningful in a very large context. I mean, first of all, I think what they're saying is that the EU needs to roll back its sanctions in exchange for Russia resuming gas deliveries to that continent, first and foremost, as they've kind of, shut down the pipeline, so to speak. And now they're talking about accepting it in other currencies as well. And I think it just confirms that Russia doesn't need to pretend any longer that it needs to export commodities through Europe. There's more than enough demand in India and in China. And I think, it makes sense. I think, if you realize that when you talk about the Russian reserves in dollars and euros and pounds and yen, they were frozen. So it's unlikely, I think, going forward, I think you'll see more of this, that any of these countries will want to continue accumulating reserves in these currencies. And I think that, it will be more along their national currencies like you're seeing here, or in gold. I think it's very telling. And I did a little research over the weekend, and I realized that the numbers are getting even crazier than I'd ever thought. First of all, you have 6 of the 13 OPEC countries right now are in or are in the process of joining the BRICS nations. The 7th, the United Arab Emirates, has signed up with a new development bank, and that new development bank is operated by the BRICS. And if you look at even something a little bit more telling, I've made a big deal over the last year or two with you and others about the Belt Road Initiative, right? So we've talked about how this is the coalition of Asia and Africa, but a lot of countries that aren't in Asia or Africa are also signing on to it. And one of the things that I found to be incredibly interesting is that every single one of the 13 OPEC countries are in the Belt Road Initiative, every single one. And so when you talk about a shift away from the dollar and away from the petro reserve status, it's happening right in front of us. Not only that, you have Russia considering a plan to buy as much as 70 billion in yuan and other friendly currencies, as they call it, in order to slow the rise of the ruble. But, that was money that always went into dollars and into euros. So you are seeing a de-dollarization happen in real time. And, it's one thing to talk about this in summer. Let's have this discussion again in November and December and see what it looks like when the gas is shut off to Germany and to parts of the European Union, how different the tone will be. I think this is just more of the same done again, and really crystallizes my belief that this is this linear progression I keep talking about, where little by little by little by little. There's a term in, if I remember right, way back from high school, in literature called the fallacy of composition, which basically says these individual pieces in and of themselves don't carry the same weight as all of them put together. And you put them all together and you see a puzzle piece or pieces of a puzzle that are beginning to take shape and form something that I think if you just look at the individual pieces, they're not as impressive. Put it all together and you can see 80-90% of the world's population is forming an alliance. And whether it is stated obviously or you have to kind of put the pieces together to see it, I think it's becoming very, very obvious. And I think you should expect to see more of this as we continue down this road here in 2022.
It's not obvious to some folks who are trying to just get through their month with their budget, trying to keep their job, trying to keep bread on the table and gas in the car and that sort of thing, hopefully trying to protect a little bit of their savings, put something in savings in such a way that it's going to stay as savings into the future. It's not obvious to ordinary people necessarily what these geopolitical hijinks and machinations and twists and turns have to do with them. And you've done a good job in the past of kind of bringing it home. Could you maybe give one or two examples of why it matters, why people should care what currency Russia's selling its natural gas in and who they're selling it to? How is that going to affect an ordinary person in the U.S., for example?
Because all of that in years past would have settled in dollars as the world reserve currency. And the lack of demand for the dollar, just go back to the x-axis you learned in Econ 101, less demand means greater supply, or another way of saying that, less demand means a lowered price for the dollar. So as the world moves away from the dollar, you have less and less and less and less demand. Well, another way of saying that is, where are those dollars going? I think those dollars become hot potatoes. Those dollars are going to be sold for other things or other assets. And as those dollars come home, if we think inflation is bad now, what happens when a good portion of the world starts to sell dollars in favor of their local currencies or in favor of gold? You look at, for example, this month or last month, India imported 46.5 tons or 1.49 million ounces of gold. And they imported over 1,136.5 tons or 36.54 million ounces of silver. And that was in June. The July numbers are looking to be about 1,700 tons or 54.7 million ounces, again, of silver. And that's kind of unofficial. Those haven't come out yet, but that's the whisper as they're talking about. Ed Steer was talking about. And when we talk about Turkey, again, this is a country that is now joining the BRICS nations, right? They imported 22.4 tons of gold or 720,200 ounces and 92.3 tons of silver during last month. The countries that are de-dollarizing, the countries that are expressing interest in joining the BRICS nations or are members of the BRICS nations are massively accumulating assets or paying for them in currencies other than the dollar. And that lack of demand for the dollar will have massive negative implications for the value of the dollar back here at home. So while we really don't care what Russia is buying energy for or what Turkey is buying energy for or in and of itself, but you should, because all of those things used to settle in dollars, and now the lack of dollar demand means less demand for the dollar, means a falling dollar value, means higher interest rates and more inflation. And that's the bottom line. And the Fed, to me, is a sideshow. The Fed really is a sideshow. Look, they may get tough on inflation. The market still doesn't believe it yet because the 1-year Treasury right now is over 3.5%. That's greater than the 2, the 5, and the 10-year. That's as inverted as it gets. I don't know if I've ever seen it so inverted. The 1-year Treasury is just a few ticks away. It's like 3.2 or 3.3 versus 3.5 or 6 on the 30-year Treasury bond. Who would want to get virtually the exact same return for a 30-year bond versus a 1-year? That's a massive inversion. So the market still believes the Fed is going to pivot. The Fed is trying to act tough. Powell saying that his hero was Paul Volcker, who blew up the economy to save the currency and inflation. Well, that's what he's intimating he's going to do, but he's not. He hasn't. They really haven't done the quantitative tightening yet. They haven't really done much in the way of raising rates. Again, with inflation at 8.5% and the federal funds rate at 2.25%, they haven't done anything. They haven't gotten tough. Maybe they continue to raise them little by little by little, and that's going to have effects of their own. But when we see all of these countries joining together one by one, it seems like every week there's a new story that falls in line with this progression of events that I have been talking to you about for going on 2 years now, and the progression continues to grow. And at some point there's going to be an announcement. At some point there's going to be that Rubicon that we cross where the point of no return is crossed, where all of a sudden, hey, just like the BRICS nations came out a few weeks ago and said we're going to issue a new world reserve currency. Well, what happens when that becomes a reality? What happens if they do use the distributed ledger technology, even if it's a private permission-only blockchain issued by the PBOC or by the BRICS nations, but you can see it. You can see what's on there. You don't have to be able to trade on it, but you can see the validity of whatever they're using to peg a new system. You'll be able to see it. And I think that's coming. I really do. I think that the way to break the dollar hegemony is not one country. It's not China. It's not Russia. It's not India. It's all of them together. And when you see the massive amount of countries joining in on this endeavor, when you see every member of OPEC is in the Belt Road Initiative, but the Belt Road Initiative is Asia and Africa, I mean, you're talking a large portion of the BRICS. They're all coming together, and not immediately and not in a way that is really easy for people to see, but little by little by little, and then bang, they're going to initiate, something's going to happen. And they're going to say, thanks for the memories, new system. And that's when things get really frightening in this country as dollars are dumped globally, as interest rates spike, as the massively overvalued asset prices react inversely to that rise in rates. So why should someone care? They should really care because this is a progression of events that isn't slowing down. It's accelerating. It's accelerating every single week that I prepare for our conversations. I emailed you or texted you 2 nights ago. Look at this interesting little tidbit. Every single week, there's another news story that falls in line with global de-dollarization and coalition of the BRICS nations, which are now moving into South America and parts of the world that we never would have thought would have joined the BRICS. Now they're all either contemplating it, have joined it, or are part of the BRICS Bank, one step away from full united a full united front. And I think that's on the horizon.
One thing that comes to mind as you talk about this progression of world participants turning away from the dollar is how that can affect the devaluation of the dollar as it's no longer needed as they start dumping the huge stockpiles of dollars that they've had to maintain since Bretton Woods in 1944 and so on. But this is another thing that people don't realize is happening right in our own laps, under our own noses, in our own country, and has been since 1913 with the foundation of the Federal Reserve, is this private central bank theft of people's hard-earned earnings, either through their labor earnings and pay, through their savings, cash in the bank, whether it's even cash in their hand. If you've got cash under the mattress or in a drawer at home, it's losing value by central bank driven theft. And we had a client who talked to us about this just in the past week and said, if you would quit calling it inflation and just call it private central bank theft, because programmatic policy by the Fed and by other central banks to have a inflation target above zero means that they are stealing from earners, savers, and retirees. So it isn't just these other countries that are waking up and saying, we want out. We have people in our own country saying we want out. And I've had reports from 2 different clients in the past week. One who tried to just make a $5,000 cash withdrawal from his bank and got run through the ringer for half an hour before they let him out of there with his cash. The second was somebody who was trying to send a wire for a metal payment and actually had to go through quite an ordeal to get the bank to send the wire. And that even after he had left the bank with his receipt in hand of the wire, got phone calls up to 15 minutes after from the bank. He had to pull over while he was driving and go through a more rigorous cross-examination again on why do you want to send to this particular, why are you buying precious metals, why are you taking your cash out of the system, all this sort of thing, and have you considered this, have you considered that, have you considered that? And finally, after 15 minutes of this, he got off the phone, hung it up, and the person who was sitting in the car next to him just looked at him and said, "Did that just happen?" And we're actually be able to do a anonymous interview with both of those individuals later this week to get those stories out there. People who are even trying to dump their dollars here in the U.S. are being given a hard time about it.
Yeah, well, add that to the linear progression of events. Add that to the fallacy of composition. In and of itself, not as big of a deal, but putting it together, it becomes I believe, a far bigger deal. And yeah, I think that's to be expected. But not only that, look at the amount of gold that is being taken off of the exchanges. Just this last week, we had off the COMEX market 189,471 ounces of gold taken off the COMEX market and 1,155,315 ounces of silver taken out of the COMEX depositories. So, you're beginning to see big money run for the exits. And I think I think these people are the banks are certainly alerted, I think, to people's anxiety. They have to be done again, because all the people that I talk to, the overreaching theme is, I don't feel safe leaving my money in the bank. I don't feel safe leaving my money in the bank. And so, I think they're probably seeing what is kind of a precursor, perhaps, or they're trying to stem a run on the banks. And maybe we're very early in making a statement like that, but heck, the banks are undercapitalized and they're over leveraged, and it wouldn't take too much of that type of people saying just I want out for there to be great problems in the industry, in the banking industry. So yeah, I think that's all of these things expect to see more and more and more of. Doesn't surprise me one bit at all.
In the face of all of that, for people who do want to acquire physical assets, real sound money, I mean, remembering that in the Constitution of the United States and the Coinage Act of 1792, the definition of the United States dollar is in the terms of the number of grains of silver. And that is the roots, that is what our founding fathers laid out for us. And we have departed from it only not at the volition of the people, but by the cabal of bankers that got together and wrote the legislation, got it through Congress, and got this happen so that our money is no longer money anymore. It's just currency. And for people who want real money, sound money, that's more constitutional correct, what can they do, and how can we help them this week?
Yeah, so, one thing I just want to hammer home is that I am a big advocate of owning gold. I think that ultimately that's the place to be. It was revalued tier 1. The banks have been massively accumulating it. One thing that is interesting, although, is that you can see they're also accumulating silver right now. And so we have been harping on silver because of its value. I think it's the value proposition of a generation. And while I am a gold bug at heart and I believe in the virtues of gold and the central banks are accumulating it, silver is still just too hard for me to ignore. It really is. And there will be a pivot at some point when the ratio switches from where it is right now at a ridiculous almost 94 ounces of silver for every 1 ounce of gold. That 94 to 1 ratio is rarefied air, where it's only been here less than 1% of human civilization, and maybe even a fraction of 1% when you look at where it's been over the past 6,000 years or 5,000 years. It's probably 0.1%. It's 4 feet of snow in Delray Beach in September. It just doesn't happen. It's an anomaly. So until we see that change, I'll continue to recommend silver as what I truly do believe is the most undervalued asset on the planet, period. Yes, I sell it. Yes, I have a vested interest in continuing to sell metals to run my company, but I accumulate it myself. I believe in it to my soul, and I think people need to take a step back and realize that this is a gift. It's an opportunity. When you see the biggest money in the world draining the exchanges, when you see the biggest central banks in the world taking massive possession of metal, all of it following this progression of de-dollarization, seeing silver at basically below its cost of production is about as big of a gift as one can get. And, I think that in the face of the U.S. ideal of maybe every nation to be able to print as much paper as it wants, and at the same time keeping inflation in check, well, wondering how the heck do they do that? And it's obviously by understating the metrics and by playing these games and telling us that a 2% inflation rate is what we want. But how about negative 2%? Because the lower the cost of living, the higher the standard of living, to your point, the last question you asked me. And I just think that there are very few things in the world that offer you the kind of upside potential that silver does right now. And every week I want to offer some gold, and then I look at the prices on silver, and I have a hard time making that leap. So, we do sell gold. I do believe in gold, but until that ratio changes, because when I look at the biggest trades that I've ever made in 33 years, there's about 6 of them, and they define my career in many respects. And every one of them had the same thing in common, the same thread in common, which was identification and exploitation of price anomalies. And this is a price anomaly. 94 to 1 is ridiculous, and it's about as undervalued as it gets. I've seen it maybe 2 or 3 times in my whole career, so at most. So we're going to offer as much as we can in the way of silver to get as much silver in people's hands as possible. So the first thing that we have is somewhat of a continuation from last week's special, where we have all 2022's Britannias, Kangaroos, which is the new the new item to this last week's special, the Britannia, Kangaroo, Philharmonic, and Krugerrand. South Africa, Austria, Australia, and United Kingdom. These are all $4.75 over any quantity, and should be as good of a price as you'll find anywhere. And then I got something that I don't know that I've ever offered ever in my whole career. And I get asked about it all the time. People say, do you have these coins? And I always say no. When they come out, if you don't grab them like that, they're gone. You have to grab these immediately when they come out, because the Mexican Mint really delivers virtually nothing to the U.S. in the way of the Silver Libertad. They're amazingly beautiful coins, but every year people have asked me for them. I seem to just draw a blank that no, we don't have them. They're high-priced, high-premium coins. I didn't jump on them when they became available, and the distributors don't have any. It's a very, very, very small allocation that comes to the United States. What's interesting about them is that they come in fractional sizes too. So we have the 5 ounce, the 2 ounce, the 1 ounce, the half ounce, quarter ounce, and the 1/10 ounce. I believe that's right. All of them in stock, 2022s are ready for immediate delivery. I have quite a few of the 1 ounce coins, the fractional coins, and the 2 and the 5 ounce, not so many. I bought as many as I could. But I do believe, rather than reciting all of the prices, I do believe that we have the best price in the United States on these items. And I'll make it my mission to do that as often as I possibly can, this being one of them. And that's why we call it a special. But for all of you out there who have asked me, can you get me the Libertads? And I always say no. Well, this is for you. I finally have them in stock and ready for delivery. So this is a big silver special where we're offering a whole bunch to choose from, all 2022, all in stock, all ready to go.
Andy, as always, thank you so much for that. And just letting people know that the Libertads are not inexpensive items, but they are also rare. They're stunning. They're sought after. And I've looked at some of the backdated ones that are available elsewhere, and wow, trying to purchase those in later years are even more expensive. So anyway, it's something that is a rare and sought after opportunity. We're grateful also for the 4 major mints that you've got at the more at the reasonable price point of $4.75 over spot. People, all of those will be available through. Just give us a call and you can pick those up. Andy, on behalf of all of our viewers, we just thank you so much for joining us as always for these weekly market updates on Liberty and Finance.
Absolutely. Look forward to seeing you next week. Done again. Stay well, and we'll talk then.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty and Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, simply call us, discuss your needs, and we will let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability, and lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be double boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Elijah, my brother Kaiser, or my father Dunnigan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.